Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. Welcome in. We are getting ready to have a really live conversation for the Work and Play replay with Mr. Nasir Bayan. Listen, guys. I'm giving myself a cheer because when it comes to names, I don't play. And Mr. Nasir has really graced the Work and Play podcast with so much wisdom about mental health, mental wellness. And by no means am I going to mess up this man's last name. Okay. It's really important that we get that right. Now, without further ado, I would love for you to introduce yourself. We can get into the episode, talk a little bit more about what's been going on since we taped your episode. But by all means, take it away.
Okay. First things first, thank you for just being you, for sharing your platform with me. For those that don't know me, I'll normally just say, my name is Nasir Bayan, and I'm in the corporate mental health and leadership well-being space, which is a fancy way of saying, really helping leaders and companies to be able to grow their ROI so that they can actually banish stress, banish burnout, boost engagement, and then show up where they're actually leading with more confidence, more clarity, and even more calm. So that's the Reader's Digest version of me and some of what I do.
Just a snippet. The latest change that we might have seen on the outside is your new change to your Instagram. Those of you guys who don't see me all the time on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram all the time. So if you ever want to connect there, we're on there. But Nasir, you changed your name to Stress Less Meeting. What's the inspiration behind your new Instagram tag?
Come on. It really came from, that's the name of my core solution that I offer to companies. So if a person's a leader within a company or just working in a company and you're like, whoa, the culture's stressed out, I'm stressed out, I know it's impacting how I show up at work, I know it's impacting me as a leader, I'm looking for a solution. The core solution I offer is called the Stress Less Meeting. So I said, well, I guess it makes sense for me to change my IG or my Instagram to that. So that's why I changed it from my company name to the actual solution, and the solutions in the title. So that's why.
Yeah. Okay. Got you. Yeah. So we went right into it. So one of the things that we talked about on the podcast, which I think was the biggest takeaway from a lot of people, was this, the concept of corporate trauma, or corporate stress, or corporate tension, right? Disorder. And all of these different names, I'm saying this because as a social worker and as a mental health professional, we both were listen, it's not in the DSM-5,
right?
But we do want to provide enough information so you can research it for yourself and identify if that's what you're experiencing. But when it comes to those different instances and experiences, meetings sometimes can be the most stressful, especially when you're having a meeting about a meeting about a meeting, right?
So you've worked in corporate.
It sounds like it, right? Got a little bit of experience, right?
Uh-huh.
So as you are evolving in this space, what are some of the things that you've learned as it relates to your core offer that you kind of added to the offering over time? What are some of those things that you've done to improve what you're offering to people?
That's an excellent question. I'd say one of the biggest is to be able to speak directly to what people are experiencing. When you're able to speak directly to what people are experiencing in the moment, whether they're entrepreneurs or they're working in corporate, immediately people lean in because it's whoa, this, this person, they get it. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's been making sure that everything that's offered is just really bite-sized, really easy for folks to digest. I think we mentioned before that I nerd out about this stuff. I love it. And when I say love it, meaning I love having a deep understanding of people. I love people, and even more so how we heal. How do we heal and get back to our wholeness so we can show up and be great as leaders, as entrepreneurs, in our relationships, family, the whole nine. So some of it's been just for me intentionally making it kind of bite-sized and just really easy, where everyone's like, okay, I get it. Without going super down the path that I love to, which is the neuroscience and the neurophysiology of stress and what it does, but just making it so that people immediately are able to get it.
Can digest it. Yes. Yeah. I think that is the biggest part. And so there's one, we can't get out of here without nerding out just a little bit. So
okay. I'm with it.
a little bit to bring out, because I have some questions for you, because I've been doing some reading, and it's always good when you have a mental health professional to dive into it with, and then we can kind of spitball from there. But I'm also hoping before we get out of here that you'll be able to provide some bite-sized nuggets for people to digest before they get off this call to enhance their own experience as leaders in the corporate space and as people who are working with leaders, right? Mm-hmm. So if we can table that, I would love to circle back around to some of those nuggets because I think that would be a really good treat to leave people with.
Okay. Roger that.
Dope.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. So those of you guys who did not watch Mr. Nasir's episode of the Work and Play podcast, please check it out. One of the things that I shared as a clip was your differentiator between mental illness, mental health, and mental wellness. Yeah. That was something that I hadn't thought about before you actually mentioned it. Like, you gave me so many different gems from a mental health perspective. I was like, I never thought about differentiating it in these ways, right? People think therapy is kind of useless or it's a luxury, right? But when you differentiate it, you understand that there are levels to this. So first of all, could you explain a little bit deeper the concept of mental health, mental wellness, and mental illness and how you differentiate those?
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, you kind of said it beautifully. Over the last 2.5, 3 years of the pandemic, we've heard the word mental health used, I mean, more than I've ever heard it used. As a therapist, as a licensed mental health professional, as a clinician. And on one hand, that's great because you hear people talking about like, oh, my mental health, I got to pay attention to my mental health. How is your mental health? Mm-hmm. So it's beautiful that people are using it. But sometimes it becomes this catch-all for like everything. And if it means everything, it means nothing. So I think in the episode, I was tapping into just getting clear that there's mental illness, there's mental health, and then when we optimize that thing, there's mental wellness. Mm-hmm. And that, it can be, and oftentimes is, a spectrum. So mental illness are, as you were saying, the things that we study as therapists or clinicians, the DSM-5 and all these sorts of things, mm-hmm. where it dives into all the ways that mentally, emotionally, psychologically, we could be ill, not doing well. If we work on that, then sometimes it gets to a point of like, oh, I'm doing okay. My mental health is okay. Or man, my mental health's a little low. I might need to take some PTO or, put something on hold or just rearrange my day. So that's when we get into managing. People say, I'm managing my mental health. And that's amazing, necessary, it's dope. And then also what I wanted to make the distinction is that when we get really clear and intentional and optimized, then we can start to have mental wellness, which is our optimal functioning. We're mentally, emotionally, psychologically, relationally, we are clear, we're on target. And that's sometimes we're able to, I think, do our best or give our best to ourselves and to the world.
100%. I absolutely agree. Now, in your line of work, would you say you operate more in the maintenance, or would you say optimal health is where you niche in at?
Yeah. Oh, that's good. It really is taking leaders and or companies from mental health. Like, oh, we're trying to manage the mental health of our employees or our workforce. Mm-hmm. Or I might be a leader that's in a, inside a company where I'm like, I need help managing my own mental health. Cool. I got you. We start here at mental health and then provide a stepwise structured way to give resources and tools to get a person or a company to mental wellness, where it's the everyday, it's the air that we live and breathe. So
yes. And I can't wait to get to those resources. Those of you guys who are just tuning in, thank y'all so much for tuning in. We're having a conversation with Mr. Nasir Bayan, and we're talking about mental health, mental wellness in the space of corporate America and in transitioning into entrepreneurship. We didn't get to the entrepreneurship part just yet, so you're tuning in at the right time. And we're going to talk about some tools that you guys can actually utilize right now to optimize your mental health. So, I geek out a lot, right? I do a lot of reading, and it's really good to have somebody in the industry to bounce ideas off of. So one of the things that I found, and to preface this, guys, you know me, but if you don't know me yet, I'm Arylle Young. And the reason that I established the Work and Play podcast is because on my transition from corporate to entrepreneurship, there was a life that I was wishing to attain, right? And I'm helping other corporate professionals make their transition into entrepreneurship by supporting them mentally and financially as they're trying to figure out, how do I create an exit strategy, right? So in my own research, I'm learning about mental health, right? I know the benefits that it has, that mindfulness has when it comes to medical interventions and personal interventions, right? Mm-hmm. And I came across this article where it basically was talking about the fact that some corporations will invest in mental health and mental wellness programs. However, there have been studies found that companies will be less likely to invest in like mental health and mental wellness for like frontline employees, the people who are on the phone. Now, the context behind that conversation was like, okay, so I'm on the phone and I've been introduced to mental health and mental wellness, and then I become more enlightened, right? I'm like, okay, these are the things that I like. These are the things that make me spiritually whole. These are the things that make me feel good in my body. And I thought to myself, okay, that makes sense. But so the same article, and I'm gonna have to drop the article in the description, says that some companies have made the decision to say, oh, we don't want to invest mindfulness in these areas because it increases turnover. So like in your line of work, I would love to get your perspective. One, you are in this space where you're helping corporations become more mentally well, right? And from a outsider's perspective, and then also to protect my clients, I'm saying, hey, if mindfulness is something that makes you feel good, whether your company offers it or not, let that be a core part of your being.
Yes.
But to hear that actually has a negative impact on like company KPIs, I'm like, that's something that's alarming to me, but I'm not the expert in the industry. So I would love to get your perspective.
And I want to make sure I'm clear. So was the article was just saying that companies know that there's a benefit, but they're just choosing not to invest in the mental health of frontline employees, and they're mainly doing managers and leaders, even though they know that it's a benefit if they do it. Was that what it was saying?
Yep. So I would say the anecdote is companies are more likely to invest in merit or salaried employees as opposed to frontline employees when it comes to mental health and mental wellness.
Gotcha. Ooh-wee.
What are your thoughts on that? Have you experienced something?
I could see where for some companies that I could see how some companies might do that. For me, instead of telling, I think it's better to ask a question. Meaning, if you are a CEO, a senior leader, anyone with decision-making authority or power within your organization, I think it's better, instead of me saying something, to ask the question: if I don't do this, if I don't invest in the mental health and well-being of all of my employees, frontline managers, execs, what's the cost? At what cost? Everything has a cost to it. So if I choose to intentionally not do that, then what's the cost to me, to the employees, to our productivity, efficiency, our bottom line, our ability to keep folks, and then I'd always have turnover where people are just, jumping ship immediately because they don't like the culture. And then what's the cost on long-term sustainability? Like if I'm a corporate leader, I don't only want to be effective and productive and competitive and doing really good work now. I want that to continue. So I think it begs the question, what is the impact on your long-term sustainability? And that's a question I think all of us, but specific corporate leaders, we have to wrestle with.
I think you're right. And I think that's a very good question to pose. When I first read it, I was like, you know what? This makes all the sense, because we push for more enlightenment among all people, right? And then some people would say that, everybody can't be entrepreneurs. Everybody can't quit their job and be like on their own company, or everybody can't do these things. And so it begs the idea that, okay, mental health and mental wellness is a luxury for some people, and it should just not necessarily be offered. So I like the question that you pose, because it now puts a critical thinking lens onto something that maybe we're looking at it from an operational perspective. Like, okay, if you work in a company, then and it hurts your ROI, then let's just not do mental health. But maybe there's an optimal way that we can have a conversation about, hey, you need this job that's on the front line, and you're a customer service agent. It sucks. It probably doesn't matter whether whether you love customers or not. Sometimes your job is just not the funnest, right? But there's a conversation between still having mental health and mental wellness, and having your job, and being able to like balance the two, whether it's a job that's like more stress related, right? But you still being able to take care of yourself, and then have the leaders critically think about a positive solution as opposed to a black and white, have it or not have it. I think that's what your question allows room for.
Come on. Yes.
I love it.
Yeah. Extremely well said. Absolutely.
I love it. Okay. So there's another concept that we talked about. And those of you guys who are familiar with the fight or flight, We talk about that all the time, right? Now, Nasir,
Mm.
because we have so many conversations, this can be attributed to the podcast, but it can also be attributed to conversations we've had off camera.
Yeah.
And one thing that you introduced to me was the fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
As we talked about that corporate tension stress disorder, we
Come
talked
on.
about that fight, flight, or freeze. So break it down for the people sometimes who don't necessarily recognize what they might be experiencing right now on the job, so they can
Mhm.
notice which element they're experiencing right now.
Yes, 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 yes. Oh, you know I love talking about this.
Get into it.
It's real. So for those that don't know, and I think most people have maybe heard the term, but just haven't heard them unpack. Most people have heard about fight, flight, and freeze, which is basically, the quick way of saying our bodies or our nervous systems are designed to keep us alive. And if there's either a threat out there or even a perceived threat, whether the threat's real or imagined, if I perceive it, then my body, my brain, and my nervous system are going to immediately react, basically to keep me safe and to keep me alive. Great. I love it. Now, the two things that immediately can happen are the fight response or the flight response. The fight response, metaphorically speaking, means my body says, all right, let's fight response is let me put on these boxing gloves and then marshal some energy. That's right. To be able to address what the challenge, the issue, or maybe even the threat is. So that's a fight response. The flight response, metaphorically speaking, is I'm going to lace up these track shoes. I'm Usain Bolt. I'm gone. All right. I'm out of here. And some of us may have, a valence or notice that we go one way or the other in general, towards fight or towards flight. Either way, it's just our body's, designed to keep us alive, to keep us safe. So you have fight or flight, but what we don't always talk about is the freeze response. And that's when the body is basically saying, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm so stressed out, it's too much, basically, that now the safest and the wisest thing for me to do is actually just to do this, to freeze. It's like being the deer caught in the headlights. And then when that happens, we're not able to think critically. We're not able to really, address the situation. Our body just says the safest thing to do is maybe to do nothing. So that's that freeze response. Sometimes people call it fawn or even fold. Like, oh, I may fold. I don't rise to meet the challenge of the day or the challenge of the business or the challenge in the relationship. Like, because my energy, my body thinks it's safest to just do this and keep that energy kind of frozen. So fight, flight, and freeze is real. And I don't have to tell you, it's real in corporate America.
You know what? I do, because not only did I experience it for myself before I had the language, there are so many folks that I'm listening to right now, just like, I gotta go. I can't. The thing about my responsibility as a coach is to say, okay, you don't want to be in your job, but why is that? Right. And so many people are dead set in that freeze spectrum, right? Where it's like, I go to work, I can't think straight. I'm looking at an email for hours and I can't hit send, right? Or I'm sitting here just spinning my wheels on what I need to do next. And I know what that's like. That's the most troubling time in your career, because this is when you can either like literally tank and get fired, or you can, like you said, rise to the occasion. And this could be you excelling up corporate. I think if I had the terminology for it, I might still be in corporate. You know what I mean? If I knew a positive solution, I may still be in corporate. But for me, it was definitely a freeze moment. And it was a knee jerk. I talk about it all the time. Hey, I left corporate America without a plan, right? Because I didn't necessarily know. Maybe I'd still be in entrepreneurship, but it wouldn't have been such a knee jerk reaction, because I would have figured out a healthier way to tap back into my mind and then use it. Maybe I would have even been able to take some type of leave, because I would have known it was a mental thing going on, right? So for those of you guys who are sitting in your desk right now, listen to what Nasir is saying and check in with yourself, because you could be experiencing one of these things. And before you get to being a deer in headlights, that's you feel like that fight or flight, those are much more apparent in our body, right?
Yes.
Like, talk about a little bit about how you can notice whether you're in fight or flight within your body.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I mean, you kind of said it at the tail end where you say it, how can you notice inside of your body or in your body? Meaning, a lot of us, I don't think I'm saying anything that most folks either don't know or haven't experienced, but in corporate, sometimes we're so go, 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 that we're living life from here up, from the neck up. of just, okay, what's the next meeting? What's the next deliverable? What's the next conversation I've got to have? What's the next thing I've got to make sure it doesn't fall through the cracks? And when we're doing that, quote unquote, living from the neck up, what we're not doing is checking in from the neck down, what literally is going on in our felt or lived experience just in that moment. It doesn't have to take forever. It could just be 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds of asking myself, what in the world is going on inside of me, in my body right now? And literally just the ability to ask that question and kind of slow down allows us to see what's there. And sometimes it's like, okay, I've got a lot of energy that wants to get out, and maybe that's, fight energy. Like I feel like I'm fighting for my job. I'm fighting for my life. I'm fighting for the goal. I'm fighting for where my business is going. Or maybe it's flight energy. Like, there's some things I need to engage, but I don't want to. But we can't get that awareness until we check in from the neck down and say, ooh, what's going on inside of my body? And that can be tangibly like raw physical sensations. Like, ooh, I can feel that there's a tightness in my chest right now.
Yes.
Or my left shoulder is clenched up like nobody's business. Or when I look over here, I notice like it's just paying attention to those kind of raw physical sensations, because that's actually, it's information, it's data, and there's wisdom in it if we start to tap into it.
Did anybody else just calm down when Nasir was like, take a moment? Yeah. I really took a breath as you said that. One of the things that I used to do, remind you, much of this information I didn't have when I was in corporate. I was a data analyst. But one of the things that I used to do was go to my car when I felt right? When I felt something tight in my chest, I would go to my car and I would turn on this like 3-minute breathing exercise. And I would close my eyes and I would do just what you just made us do just now.
Yeah, that's it. That's
it.
That
is so powerful.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, literally, if you didn't take a breath right now, I encourage you guys to do that, because whether you are in fight, flight, or freeze, sometimes a breath is the one thing that unlocks you. And as much as I've learned about mindfulness in my social work journey, right, my social work education, there's so much more in that head of yours that comes from years of experience, as we talked about on the podcast. So helping others with their mental health is one thing. Helping leaders help their employees with their mental health and wellness is another. But for you've been on your journey of becoming an entrepreneur, and you dropped a couple gems on your own perception shifts along the way. So I'm curious about your mental health and how you've developed it, either since the podcast, or if you'd like to reiterate some things that you've developed going from corporate to entrepreneur and how that's helped you along the way.
Yeah. Oh, wow. There are two things that are coming up immediately. One is, I guess, simply put, begin within. Begin within. And I'm going to pause and I'm going to take a breath and say it again. Begin within. Like, if I'm not good, I can't be as good as I want to be or need to be or desire to be for anyone else. Clients, colleagues, family, the whole nine. So that begin within piece is huge on any aspect of health or wholeness. Mental health and well-being, physical health and well-being, financial health and well-being, relational health and well-being. So I kind of set that stage to say the pandemic and moving from corporate into entrepreneurship, for me, like, it reinforced that on such a huge level. Like, when you're in corporate, there is a defined structure. When you're in entrepreneurship, it is your structure and you have to create it. So for me, that was the challenge. It was the growth edge. And it was good. Like, it helped me to lean in and say, like, hey, you have to take full responsibility for self so you can show up and do the work that you really, really love to do in helping clients or helping other folks. So yeah, that's a part of it. And then just mental health, like, I'm a licensed therapist, mental health professional, whatever you want to call it. And I have a therapist. Like, I don't go tap in with her every single week, but I tap in as needed. Like, when I know I need someone to hold the space and just help me think through something or work through something.
I'm so glad you said that. I usually will say this, and I know there's two sides to it, because as I evolve, I realize there is always gray area, but a surgeon cannot operate on themselves.
Come
You
on.
hear what I'm saying?
Come on.
You gotta know when it's time to tap in with an expert. As an expert, you're like, okay, my mind is doing a thing. Maybe you recognize your mind is doing that thing sooner, but you still can't go in there and like tweak it sometimes. Sometimes you can, which is why I said there's that gray area. But then there's you being able to resort to an expert yourself.
1,000%. 1,000%. Oh, it's a must.
Oh my gosh. So I guess even as you mentioned that, so first of all, those of you guys who are just joining, we're talking to Nasir, Bayan, and we're talking about, now we're in a space of talking about your entrepreneurship journey, like, and how mental health and mental wellness has shaped your, like, you've actually had to work on yourself. So if you guys are coaches and therapists yourself, take it from Nasir and go ahead and get yourself some wine.
Come on. don't wait. Yeah. Don't hesitate.
Especially as the entrepreneurial journey unfolds. So let's talk about yours. And maybe we can just talk about like maybe one or two challenges that you've experienced that people don't know about this journey. What are some of those things that people have to face if they're considering, like, they've done all the work, they're in corporate, they're like, okay, now it's time for me to try that thing. I'm whole, I'm healthy. What do they have to look forward to, or what's some of the challenges that you experienced along your journey?
Sis. Oh, yeah. Okay. As soon as you were asking the question, I'm like, oh, I know what was coming up. And there are multiple. This isn't the only one. So there are multiple, but the one that immediately came up was, I don't know, everyone's minds may vary, but for me, it was a fear of being seen. I don't know if that's going to resonate with some folks. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But it was a fear of being seen. Like, I'm an introvert and I still love people, so I can engage and love engaging. But at the end of the day, I get energy by kind of being still, going inward, doing something that's out there. And that kind of recharges my battery. So I said to say, being someone that's kind of inward focused or introverted in entrepreneurship, you gotta engage. You know, I think a wise man once said, if they don't know you, they can't flow you. All right. If people don't know who you are, what you're about, how you show up, how you serve, then they can't get access to that. And for me, it was a growth phase to go from being introverted and inward focused to having to be more outward focused and client facing, and just to do more of that more consistently. It's not that I hadn't done it before in corporate. I did it and loved it, but I have to do it like as a necessity. So I realized I was bumping up against that fear of being seen, jumping on the camera to record some content. And the stuff I talk about, it's like, I realized like, whoa, there's a tightness going on, or why are my palms getting sweaty? It was like my body was having a reaction. So I said, okay, this is here for a reason. Let me go ahead and lean on my folks. Let me tap in with my therapist or my crew or my team and find out what's there. And it's been a process of leaning in. And I feel a ton more comfortable and confident than I did, but it's still a leaning in. And that's something a person wouldn't, just to answer your question directly, wouldn't necessarily know if they just first met me.
No, but you're so spot on. You're so spot on. And so here's the thing. Nasir is an introvert. I'm an extrovert. But I've been toying with this thought of like, I must be an introverted extrovert. People always say I'm an extroverted introvert. Or you know how I'm saying, like, backwards. But I love people. I get charged up by being around people. But everything that you said, which is like, as an entrepreneur, you are the marketer, you are the brand manager, you are the consultant, you are the talent, you are all the things, and you're the back end, right?
Come on.
And I love being out in front of people. I love when the light is shining on me. But one thing that I've learned, and I want to add this into my course, is like, when you go from corporate and you're like going on, I used to wake up in the morning and scroll on the funny sites on my Instagram just so I can get a little laugh for today. And I put it in my pocket and go on about my business. But never was I thinking about being an influencer. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Never was I thinking about sharing my day on a regular basis until I did. And I was like, okay, now that I'm in front of this camera, how do I find solace in my own mental health, right? As things come up for me, right? How do I share the things that I want to share? And then how do I keep the things to myself? Lisa Nichols says, share the testimony, not the test. By the way, what's up, Coach LaShawna? Like, another mental health professional.
The biz therapist?
Yes.
Come on. All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lisa Nichols says share the testimony, not the test. And I realized being out in front of people and being on the limelight and being where the cameras are requires me to be more diligent about going in. Because I'm typically I people know me, I think out loud. I think as I talk, right?
Yeah.
And there's no what's the word? Consequence to that unless the cameras are on, and you kind of never know. Like in 2022, you could say something and that might just be the thing that goes viral and people love you for, or you could say something off the top of your head and people be looking at you like you're crazy.
Right. Yeah.
So it's important that we protect our mental health as we transition from this place of living in a cubicle, and maybe you do speaking events every now and then, to being more seen, as Nasir is saying, like being able to like manage that energy. If you're an introvert or an extrovert, manage that energy as you protect your mental health. That is so profound.
Oh.
You drop so many gems on the podcast. Like even okay, so this is the last thing we'll say, and then we'll go to some tools and tips that you can share for folks. But you saying that you changed your perception of what power actually mean, the definition of power. So yeah, again, this speaks to the journey of people saying, I want to fire my boss, right? So when you come to me and you're on a strategy call, you're like, okay, help me quit my job. Well, now we got to talk about why. If you're standing on this pedestal of fire your boss, now we have to talk about your relationship with authority, your relationship with power, and the thing that Nasir said. And if y'all haven't seen the clip, you change your perception to, and I'm going to butcher this, but the impact that you can have by owning the power that you have. I guess once you change your perception of what you thought was power, and then you started to own it, you realize the power that you had to help other people. Am I saying that right?
Spot on. I mean, come on.
You said it.
Yeah.
You literally dropped so many gems. So if you could real quick, just go into that philosophy, like from your own mouth, like what did that actually mean for you? And then we can shift a little bit, go into tools, but you dropped so many gems. I was like, I hope they catch it, you know?
That's very kind. Thank you. I receive it. That makes me feel good. You said it. I mean, you absolutely said it. For me, there was a process of what I call renegotiating my relationship with power. One being, there was before I could say it this way, like I had to get clear in here. But one was a internal assumption or belief that there was always power out there and not necessarily power in here, or not as much. So that was one that I like, oh, okay, well, what's that about? So I had to kind of investigate it, interrogate it, get clear on it. And the second thing was believing that power was always out there. I oftentimes saw, or what stuck out when I would hear the word power, was people misusing or abusing power. So if I would hear the word power, like that was the inner kind of response that would happen. It's almost like a typing, like this happening. And it took me a while to realize that one, power doesn't have to be misused or abused. Power rightly used is beautiful. Like power, when it's rightly used, is beautiful. When it's shared, and we realize that power doesn't have to be power over someone else. Power can be power shared with other people. And if there's always power within, game changer. It was like my brain and my body got it on a deeper level. And then my internal dialogue was like, hey, if I could verbalize externally the internal dialogue of what was happening inside of what I was saying to self, it was, you have a responsibility to own your power, to acknowledge your power, to claim your power, so that you can use it rightly in the service of helping other people. And it was, that was the shift.
I could not have said, I know I tried, but I could not have said it better. I don't care what Nasir says. I was like, yeah, like drop it on them again. Speaking of that power, let's do that. Let's talk about that internal power that people can take within themselves. Before you get to a therapist, I think that there are things that you can do on your own that will prepare you for those conversations. And so I think that does speak to the internal power that you can listen. So could you leave us with some practical tools and tips that someone right now can utilize it, whether they're in crisis or whether they just want to maintain their own mental health, what are some tools and resources that you would leave us with so that people can take that power back within themselves?
Yes. Ooh, the two that immediately come up, one I call strive for five, strive for five. And the other I call head, heart, hands. Head,
Okay.
heart, hands. So strive for five is literally, I'll do this with clients, whether they're counseling therapy clients, whether they're leadership clients, whether they're corporate clients. And strive for five is literally me saying or prompting someone and saying, hey, I want you to give yourself permission just for this moment to take 5 of the deepest breaths that you have taken all day. So they're striving for 5, meaning you may get to all 5, or you may just get to 2 or 3, and you're like, oh, I'm good. I got what I needed. But it's an opportunity to intentionally pause, slow down, and to go from talking about mental wellness or thinking about mental wellness or even feeling about mental wellness into actually practice mental wellness, even if it's just for a moment. So that's one of the like tangible resources. Yeah.
I'm feeling it already.
Come on. and this is me nerding out, but when we do that, our nervous systems literally start to downregulate. So when people say, wow, I feel myself breathing or a little bit of tension leaving, like, wow, I can feel something, it's because our nervous systems are actually just getting rid of excess or unnecessary stress that we may have been holding. So that strive for 5, invitation for 5 deep breaths is one. And then the other one is what I call head, heart, hands, which is simply an invitation to, after a person's kind of taken a few breaths and maybe got a little bit more grounded or centered, to just do a quick check-in with self. What is going on right now in my head, meaning my thinking? What am I thinking about in this moment? What's going on right now in my heart, either what I'm feeling or my emotions, or what do I value in this moment? And then how does that show up in terms of my hands, meaning what I'm actually doing or maybe failing to do or not doing in this moment? And just taking, a person can do that in 10 or 15 seconds. And when we do a head, heart, hands checking in, it just helps us to get clear of where we're at, if we're on base, if we're in our integrity, or momentarily outside of it, and to switch it up as needed. So those two are maybe two tangible tools or resources.
I love that. And it ties into the conversation earlier where we're talking about noticing what's in your body. Like, what does it feel like? The head, heart, and hands is basically you being able to be mindful and check in with yourself. We call it a body scan.
Yes.
And like at Emory. So like head, heart, and hands, being able to check, are your hands shaking? Are your shoulders up here? Like to check in with your body. And I love that. So 2 techniques that you guys can use right now: head, heart, hands, and strive for 5. I think I like the strive for 5.
Yeah.
Sometimes I catch myself going, oh, even if I know to breathe, I speed it up and I don't give myself the time. So I can give myself the most intense, or not intense, which is intentional.
Yeah.
Low breaths in the moment that I've taken all day, especially when I'm in them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's it.
Listen, Nasir, I have enjoyed you. This was in the making. This was in the making for a while, guys. And I nerd out when it comes to mental health, like coming from business and then embracing, psychology and social work. I'm in that transition. So I have the two, but being able to talk to someone who has that mindset already, that social work, that mental health, and it's just like who you are. It really does elate a side of me that I just like, I don't get from everyone. So thank you so much. First of all, for being a friend and for being on the podcast.
You are so welcome. The thanks and the gratitude is it's mutual. It's mutual. And I'm very grateful. And it's exciting to have folks that you see their greatness and their dopeness in action. So mutual, very mutual.
Very, very mutual. Those of you guys who have not seen, I don't want to call it the wrong number, but it's Nasir Bayan, the relationship between mental health, mental wellness, and entrepreneurship. Those of you guys who are considering your journey, you're in corporate America, you may feel like you're in crisis right now, or you may feel like you're in that maintenance stage, or perhaps you want to check out what this entrepreneurial journey might have for you. if those are the two journeys, if either one of those journeys are for you, then you want to reach out to Mr. Nasir, right? Or myself. But Nasir, before we get up out of here, how can the folks contact you, and what are some of the things that you're offering right now?
The probably the easiest is I'm on LinkedIn. Like that's the social platform I'm on the most. So if you go to LinkedIn and you type in Nasir Bayan, you'll see me pop up. My website that deals most directly with corporate mental health and leadership well-being is www.stresslessmeeting.com. Stresslessmeeting.com, all one word. And I've got an IG that's Stress Less Meeting. I haven't really started posting yet, but stay tuned. There's more coming. So if you're either inside of corporate and you're like, man, we really need some of this stuff to help shift our culture and help folks to be less stressed and feel better, so then they can engage more. Or you're just a leader that wants to tap into your own well-being, by all means, reach out and let's talk.
Let's talk. Yeah. Y'all guys, I'm so grateful to have been able to bring Nasir to you and to my community. If you have any questions, go ahead and reach out to Nasir. He's most findable on LinkedIn. You heard the man. And if y'all have any other questions, you also know where to find Nasir. But until next time, any final words before we get out of here?
Just gratitude, deep gratitude.
We can have a whole nother 30 minutes about that one, but we won't. We'll see you guys in part 2. All right, guys. Have a good one.